Hello and welcome to another WeAreDevelopers Live. It's Wednesday again. We're sitting here again and we're talking about a lot of stuff. I collected a lot of interesting links. We're going to have some great tools for you to look at. And we've got a guest here again today, which we had before. So Peter Kröner, you're back in here today. How are you doing?
Yeah, hi. I'm doing great. How are you?
We're not bad. Like the weather is like finally not slippery. Like I can actually walk around Berlin without skis on and it's not bad. It's really interesting.
Yeah, but from my perspective, Berlin is basically, northern Italy. Of course, it's warmer there.
Well, that made a lot of sense. But like the other thing was also what fascinated me looking at the weather. Like Germans talk about the weather right now. I'm so British, fuck. Yeah, basically, yeah, we were in the north and we saw like -8 degrees in Berlin and like 16 degrees in the southwest of Germany on the same day. And you're like, how does that work out? Like my partner's been here for 20 years and she said like she never had a winter that was like fully snow, but this one was so far.
It's going to be an all German affair today as well, isn't it? Because we were talking just beforehand about how easy it is now for non-English speakers to speak in their native language. So I feel like maybe I should up my German game because I'm really outnumbered here every week, and I'm forcing you both to speak in English. So something needs to change. Yeah.
Well, we get more folk from England and probably from America as well, because we have our Congress coming to America, and we want to talk with more people from over there, what they have to say and what they're going to bring to the Congress. So hopefully there will be something in there. Maybe something we need to pre-record earlier, like the day before, and then just do the guest session and play that from the can into the show rather than being a live thing, because we don't want to have people like 6 o'clock in the morning being on the show and then they look like Peter does now. That's really not right. Cool. So let's set up some resources because we got a lot of cover, and I want to talk to a lot of stuff that you covered lately, Peter, as well, because I see you popping up on LinkedIn every 2 seconds about some cool stuff on Fridays about getting rid of more JavaScript and these kind of things. So we'll be interested to talk something. So the State of JS survey is out again. I haven't deep dived into it yet, and I kind of I mean, it's always very insightful. It's really amazing to see how much effort is going into that and how much insight you have, like what the average use of things is. And is it out or is it just
No,
the result?
it's out. It's just hard to find.
Yeah, okay. And I mean, I talked with a few other people that have been doing JavaScript for a long time, and also on the ECMAScript board and stuff like that. And I'm kind of getting the feeling like we get a lot of stuff in JavaScript these days that feel like in the ECMAScript standard, that feel like Python has it, so we have to have it in JavaScript, or Ruby has it, and we have to have it in JavaScript. Like, I think most of the good battles have been won, and we have it now natively in JavaScript, and now it feels a lot of syntactic sugar is coming in. How do you feel about that, Peter?
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you steal from established languages where a feature has been proven to work? I mean, this makes sense, and it's not just you feeling like this. In part, it's quite explicit if you read the specification proposals, the original Markdown files in the GitHub repositories. It's kind of like they have this feature. I'm thinking of explicit resource management, for example. They have this over there in C# and in Python. Let's yank this and put it into JavaScript because it might be useful. So this is really an explicit goal, I think. And, why not? If it has been proven to work, why not steal it?
I guess the thing that I have to come to terms with more is that JavaScript is now a compiled language for a lot of people, and not just something that's runtime compiled. So it feels like a lot of the stuff that we thought about in C# and Java and things before, because we went through a compilation phase, basically becomes much more close to the metal thinking that in JavaScript before it's like it's a browser language. It gets executed while it's running, so let's not think about it too much. But now we take it more professionally, and it's everywhere. So I guess that's where it's coming from.
But you really nowadays don't have to compile as much, I feel like. I mean, it's still happening because the tools make it easy, and the state of JavaScript is more like a state of node modules, if we are honest. There's a bit about JavaScript and a whole bunch about third-party stuff that you can optionally install. But you can also punt quite a lot of work to the browser. If I think about native module support, I mean, what the browser's doing is essentially tree shaking on a client level and deduplicating downloads and even execution. So there's a whole bunch of compiler magic that is going on today by default that you could just skip and have the browser do if you wanted to.
Well, yeah, it's a bit like when we did a lot of performance stuff. We made like sprite sheets of images, and now with HTTP2 and streaming, we don't have to care anymore because there's no delay in like loading 5 images. So a lot of the stuff that we had to do by hand to just make things work, we now have in the product itself. And yeah, it's going to be interesting a world to see. But yeah, take a peek at the state of JS. There's always got some good stories in there. I haven't had time to look into it, and I was more excited like 5 years ago when it became like, oh my God, this is now natively in there. This is now natively in there. So it feels like there's, as the front end guy that I am, and I'm excited about things that are visible, it always feels like, what is this thing doing? But the knowledge coalescing, for example, I think that's a very interesting. I kept using that right now, and I realized I could have like 5 lines of if statements or just one thing that actually only executes when it's going in there. So that is a really interesting feature that I found. Cool.
Yeah, it's quite interesting as well. Just on that, I just want to say one more thing. Looking down, how it's also, I think, when you look at these big data sets, you get a bit of an idea of like the insight into how developers think. That there's these non-baseline features that one of the the array features. So you've got your two-sorted method and things like this that everyone's jumped on because they're new, and then the number of people using them maybe suggests that yes, they're actually really useful, and that this isn't just like because it's new it's being used. But then you're also going to have some of these like I say, knowledge coalescing, where really useful, so used for that reason, but you're going to have others, I'm sure, that are maybe like clouded by the fact they're being used a lot in a framework context. So people are sort of answering these questions, and it's making certain features look more used maybe than they are. It might just be that you're being forced by the frameworks to use certain approaches or whatever.
And we should keep in mind that this isn't a real survey, as in, with the participants being selected by some sort of criterion. It's essentially an online form that anyone can fill out, and it's probably skewed towards people who would, like to fill out a form about JavaScript, which doesn't necessarily map to JavaScript developers in general.
Yeah. I think the array bits are an interesting one, because I remember doing like Code 100 challenges that and then found that PHP had an array function for it that always was out of a sudden it was like, oh, that's a one-liner in that one language, because we have to be independent in Code 100 challenges. But now in JavaScript we're getting these things as well. Like, I mean, shuffling an array is now a one-liner that used to be like a massive thing, and the when you teach people programming and different programming languages, the mutation of the arrays is always the main thing that confuses the hell out of people. Like, you just basically, you have people then saying like array equals array function, because they just don't know if the original one is being manipulated or not. So you store it twice, and that's actually not a good idea. But it's just it was always a thing to think about. Like, and I remember, Dan, you did a question in Code 100, like, what's the difference between these 3 functions and the array? It was about mutating the original one and not mutating the original one.
Yeah, like deep and shallow cloning and things like that. And I think that's something I'm never going to remember. That's where I've got MDN open, and I'm referring back to it. I feel like with things like arrays, you could very easily get into that kind of hell of not really knowing where things are stored if you don't. So I think I don't ever see that being something that someone can necessarily remember off the top of their head. Maybe they do. Maybe it's just me. But it's definitely a docs thing, I think, when I'm working with that cloning of arrays, etc., mutating.
I just make it, and then when I realize it doesn't do it, I wonder what's going on. I mean, in PHP, it always feels wrong when you do like some array sort and then as a one-liner without actually assigning it to something, and you're like, okay, because it mutates the original array. But it looks, when you look through your own code, and you're like, what have I done there? This doesn't look like valid syntax, but it just did, like. Because you don't have the dot notation. In JavaScript, you just do it with a dot notation. So it feels like it's one line and you still have the context of the array name. And in PHP, you don't. So that was always a confusing thing for me.
Makes sense.
Now, there's an MCP server now by Google that actually is Developer Knowledge API and MCP server, which I guess helps large language models to do the right thing and not create like random tag soup, or not quite sure about it.
Do literally anything to avoid having to write documentation.
Okay. But yeah, it seems to be a good idea because I'm still confused about the inconsistency of generated code when I get things created for me. Like, I mean, I found myself doing a lot of stuff, getting it generated just to try out the Copilot command I functionality. And when it uses get element by ID instead of query selector with a hash, I know it wasn't code written by me, but it was code written by Copilot, because I never do get element by ID anymore. These days are over. But it feels like this is still a thing that is in demo code, and it finds it. So the inconsistencies there would be an interesting thing to see. But MCP server for that is not a bad idea. So let's see if we can try it out and play with it.
It's great. It's an API to get documentation, and they even wrote some documentation on how you use the API that gets you the documentation.
You're saying that they wrote documentation. Maybe they got Copilot to write the documentation, or Gemini.
This could actually be. I, of course, didn't really look at this text. I mean, it has a lot of bullet points, so it might be AI generated. I don't know.
Cool.
Everything is nowadays, unfortunately.
This was interesting as well. Like the sudo command is basically one person that's been running it for 30 years, and now he doesn't want it anymore, and now he needs support for that. It's a bit like when I just talked to the curl maintainer, and but this is just worrying, isn't it? That the command that people use to shoot themselves in the foot all the time is actually maintained by one person.
It's kind of like the literal XKCD comic with the one single person maintaining everything. And did you know that sudo, like this utility, has its own logo?
Yeah.
No,
and did you know that this logo is a sandwich? So it's all XKCD all around.
Yeah, he's a clever guy. I was at a conference in Sweden, I think. Yeah, it was Sweden. And he was speaking there, the guy from XKCD, and that was a very thorough talk. And it's very interesting. I also got his book, the one where he does like questions and then gives the scientific explanations for totally bogus questions. So yeah, very scarily clever person. And predicted a lot of stuff there. GitHub now actually have a thinking about like doing something to make sure that you don't have to do the AI testing of bad contribution or low quality contributions. And like when you get the vibe coded 6,000 lines of code, then it would automatically do something against it. So it will be interesting to see how that one works out.
I'm gonna guess it won't. I mean, you can't solve every problem at the platform level. Something more fundamental is broken here, like with the sudo example as well. This is all, like the mental model behind all of this is open source software like envisioned in the 80s, but we're kind of past the 80s. We need some sort of new paradigm, not just with like AI contributions, but also with funding and maintainer burnout and like the entire global economy resting on the shoulders of just one guy without any backers maintaining a critical utility all by himself. This wasn't really something that was on the table back then. Now we have it, but we still kind of think about software and licenses like we did back then. We use literally the same licenses in some cases. So someone needs to come around and invent something fundamentally new. I think this is not going to be solved by a feature on GitHub.
Yeah, I mean, generally as well, like when all the code is generated, like who's actually the owner? What's happening there? We have a comment by the chef as well. They're saying like with the syntactic sugar in JavaScript, like in a future where AI is writing our code and human DX is irrelevant, what does that even mean? I don't think that actually human DX is actually that irrelevant. I think it's just moving more into a reviewing problem and a curation skill rather than a writing skill. Like we have a deluge of like code coming in that gets generated for us, or people doing pull requests with generated code. So our job is to actually find a better way to filter that and make sure that we're getting the right code in. But yeah, it's I mean, of course, GitHub does that to protect itself as well, because it's of course a massive ding to the performance of the platform as well if we all die in like bad contributions. And it also gives a bad reputation for the platform. Now, when we talked about things that sound like a bad joke, and I think I made that bad joke to Dan a few weeks ago, there's actually now there's actually
as soon as I saw it, Chris.
there's a mold hunt right now, which is like product hunt for mold bot generated products, where then AI bots try to sell it to each other and be excited about being acquired by others. I don't know how product hunt works.
Am I crazy, or is this just stunt marketing for some crypto bullshit?
Must be, yeah.
Like you have this crypto ticker in the top right corner, and if you go there, it starts to smell really strongly like some sort of Ether Bitcoin crypto garbage.
Yeah, but a lot of those, I mean, that is what Moldbot turned to be out as well. So I think it's just on brand.
It's also a lot of code, not great code, but there is some, something substantial there. But this really looks like mostly a scam to me.
Yeah.
But the idea was quite interesting, though,
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it sounded to me like something that's actually really pissing me off now, because I thought it would be something like the Register or like the Onion would come up with and be like a thing. But if it's just a scam, then let's move on. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Talking about other things I could not have predicted is that Notepad++ had another hacking attempt and actually sent out malware with its installer, and seems to be that there's state-sponsored hackers behind it. And if anybody had asked me, like, well, if I'm a bad person and I want people to actually install malware, what should I attack in 2026? I think Notepad++ would not have been my answer.
But you guys noticed that like a few hours ago, there was a remote code execution vulnerability published in regular Notepad?
Yeah.
I mean, this is even more juicy, in my opinion.
It's interesting. I mean, I understand the Notepad one, because that comes with the platform. If you have a Virgin Windows machine...
But wait. You're telling me you understand how you do a remote code execution in Notepad? Well, please enlighten me, because I didn't understand it. How do you get remote code to execute in regular old Notepad?
Well, probably hidden characters that execute the code in there and save it as a JavaScript file or as an executable or as a bash file or whatever. I mean, it's an editor. Any text field can be used to inject code, and Notepad is actually meant as a code editor. So yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, but the attack surface is like has a size that I would expect to be able to, be protected and sandboxed.
Yeah, but
didn't they just put like a giant program?
But didn't they just put a lot of AI features into Notepad and in Windows Paint?
As far as I understand it, AI is not responsible for this one.
Okay. Interesting. Let's deep dive into it. Fascinating.
Yeah. Either way, I felt quite protective. I don't know about you. I felt like it was a specific piece of software, even though, the original Notepad is like really where it all started for me. But I felt a bit protective. It's like I care more about them attacking this because it means something to me. It's like attacking Dreamweaver back 15 years ago. I'd be like, leave it alone. I don't know. It's just sad, really.
I mean, I remember a few other surveys where people asked what people use for code editors, and Notepad++ was still high up in like enterprise people stuff that don't have to use a massive IDE. I guess it's like attacking Vim,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's. I mean, I guess the maintainer of Notepad++, which can't be that many people either, didn't expect that kind of like limelight to come onto the project in 2026. But yeah. Don't know why I put that in there, but basically I like the idea that we have like modals and we have like all kind of things in the page right now, and now people are discussing again if you should use a modal if you go to another page. Same with like page transitions. It feels right back to the discussions we had when Flash came out, and out of a sudden the browser didn't refresh anymore, and history wasn't seeded in the browser, and we had to do all kind of like a hidden iframe that we would refresh from Flash to actually seed the history before we had the history API. But yeah, it's an interesting thing that people are now. I guess people are kind of keen to make everything a modal now or a pop-up inside their page, where it's like, just send people to another page. It's as cheap by now, and with a transition, it probably wouldn't even be obvious that it's happening. But it's interesting to see that people put like a lot of UX research and effort into telling people what to use where.
I mean, the best thing about this article is that it's published on the platform that it's published on. And if you're not signed in, the moment you start scrolling, you get a giant modal dialogue telling you to please sign in, which is just great.
Yeah.
We live in the best timeline.
Yeah, I know. That's always fascinating when I go to my go-to browser for like my private stuff now is actually LibreWolf, which is like the privacy hardened Firefox, and basically everything is useless. Like I just clicked on a YouTube link, and it's basically I get the Cloudflare click box, and then I have to pick traffic lights or cars from images, and I'm like, what is this? 5 years ago? It's just incredible how your browser, your main browser that allows you to be logged in everywhere and everything, like it gives you an impression of what the web could be, but most of the people out there have another experience at all.
Yep.
And yeah, the irony of being on a platform that's completely in your face, talking about like don't write things that are in your face, was not lost on me. This was also really, really freaking cool. There was basically somebody used a heart emoji in an app, and that actually caused the app to load another font, and that made Safari actually about 100 times slower than it should be. And just basically not having the font family in there and color family speed up the whole thing. Like one heart emoji, that's just mental.
I mean, it's probably the heart emoji plus all the rest of the application React included, right? I mean, this is essentially triggering a bunch of reflows in a page, but you would expect a browser to be able to handle a bunch of reflows in a page, unless you have like 4 million diffs, in which case you are probably using React, and then it turns into a problem. Like the heart is the source of the problem, but the scale of the problem is probably very much, supported by this being modern web development.
Yeah, it did seem like that. I think when I read the article, it was one of the first things. I think they sort of had a feeling, didn't they? They said something like, I had a theory that it was probably React, and then I think they went into like DevTools, and they could see, the React DevTools and see that it was React. But yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's like I sort of had the same thought. This is probably React. I think it's just that layers and layers of abstraction and how easy everything is to sort of become detached from what you're actually doing. That I can totally see somebody doing that, importing in a font, not thinking about it, and then having this issue down the line.
I think this actually points to a real problem with Safari. Like, this is something that needs to be fixed on the browser level, but in order to turn into a sort of catastrophe, it needs React to essentially help along. Like, one bad decision, one bug also needs a system that it can bring down.
I just found the tagline for React. In order to turn it into a real catastrophe, you need React.
You can quote me on that.
That's a great ad. Like that, I really like that. Now, I love when people go deep and basically go almost mentally deep. And I love that. This is an interesting hexagonal grids article. And he just tells you how to do a hex grid in all the details you would never ever wanted to know. But it's gorgeous. It's just beautiful. That kind of stuff is making me happy that people.
But this article doesn't quite sell you on the why, though.
Yeah. Right? No, it's just he just said I want a hexagonal grid. Like he doesn't say that it's useless or what the benefits of it is. He just went into the rabbit hole and wallowed around in it like a pig in shit. It was wonderful.
It is very cool. I wondered if the only thing I could see that being useful for, when you look at that page, you think it's like when you're selecting tickets on a plane or on like a UI where it's selecting, gig where you want to sit. Other than that. But I did think, it is kind of mentally quite a difficult thing to envisage, isn't it? Because it feels like you would be crossing pixels. I don't quite know how to describe it, but the idea of the diagonal lines and then still needing to have like an accurate path of where your mouse is hovering, like it feels like a potentially complicated thing to do. And yeah, the article proves it probably is, actually.
Yeah, but that's just because you're so used to squares. Like if you break it down in terms of, I need my tiles, for lack of a better term, to have an equal distance to their respective neighbors, the only way to get there is actually hexagons.
Yeah. Yeah,
Interesting.
because you don't have the white space that you would have with circles. Like circle packing is another interesting algorithm to talk about. But and I love that everything is interactive. This is the web I want. This is not like a 5-minute video explaining me the thing, but I can click around in it and I can play with it. It's like the coding instructions of WeAreDream back then, where basically like, okay, you get this and you make it interactive, and it's a beautiful, beautiful read. And and like the distance bit. I mean, there's a few things that are not used on the web as much as I thought they would be, like circular menus. You see them in games all the time, like menus that pop out around a circle, around a main circle. That has never become a native thing on the web, or like it's really tough to do. That's something where you have to write a lot of CSS yourself and the JavaScript yourself as well, because there was nothing that actually did that kind of stuff. But in a small amount of space, it's a very, very useful thing to give you a lot of options where like a multi-level flyout wouldn't do. You give you the things.
I mean, customizable selects are in the works, so we might get there.
Yeah. But then again, I mean, macOS with Tahoe killed the Finder, because like right now everything seems to be overlaying each other without me wanting to, and my dock looks like my glasses are dirty or my screen is not properly aligned. So I don't know what's going on there. But yeah, this is a good deep read if you can't sleep and you want to go deep dive onto that one. Now I love when people do things to actually punish hardware, and this had me in stitches the first time I saw it. Because somebody actually built a Flappy Bird for foldable phones, where you actually play by folding the phone, and like you do Flappy Bird up and down jumping just by doing it like that. And I just see this video and I'm already in pain. This is like, this is not meant to do. A phone like that is not meant to exist. And now it's just you use it for useless things rather than just like doing the fold as an interaction. I thought it was a genius way of actually making sure your very expensive hardware dies really quickly.
But the next one is even worse, in my opinion.
Oh, the archery game.
Like
worse.
I can feel everything breaking when it comes to this charging cable trick.
It's a great idea. I mean, I love the idea that there's these sort of APIs, or there are these sensors that you can then interact with. I love that, because I don't do enough of it myself, but it's not the way to have a phone for very long.
I mean, just the way that the game is completely impossible to play, because you will have some tilting when you take the thing out. Like, you cannot take it out with. And I said to Dan when I showed it the first time, I mean, it's good that this is USB-C. Like, I mean, USB Mini, like the one with the hooks in it, that would be even worse, because that would be just really killing your USB port. But yeah,
I want this with an old school serial cable, like with the screws.
Take your monitor and move it up and down.
Yeah.
Now we're talking.
I mean, Firefox on Android had something when you shake the phone to do something. I think it's clearing the cache or something like that. And it's quite fun that we go into this physical space, because I remember years and years ago, Opera always did April Fool's jokes, and they did like facial expressions to control Opera, because they were the first ones to have like mouse gestures to actually control things. And it was one of the Opera guys was basically like going like that would clear the cache and these kind of things. But now you can do all of that, so that's quite interesting to see.
Yeah, it's funny as well, because I think about 10 years ago, there was a big thing with like pervasive technology. I remember this was a big sort of push, in terms of the idea that there would be technology everywhere and we would interact with it with kind of gestures and, like we do with our phones. But the idea that that's going to just become like smart cities and that everything's pervasive. And I love the fact that fast forward 10, 15 years, and what we've actually got is somebody just pulling in and out their charger to play a game. And it's like the hype cycle in full effect.
Yeah. Ubiquitous computing was the name, wasn't it? Like,
that's
pervasive. Yeah. This was an interesting paper as well, that they actually, when you have PDF text reduction, I don't know why you would redact the PDF right now. I don't know if there's any need for that.
No idea.
But but it feels like that that even if you do the black bars in there, the glyph positioning under it, you can actually still guess the character. So Of course, there is the problem where some of the PDFs were redacted, where they just kept the text in, so you could do your Command A and actually highlight the whole thing and paste it into a text box, and you get even the redacted bits. But even the redacted bits in PDFs now seems like they have the glyphs, the glyph information still in there, even if the rendered things aren't in there anymore. So you can guess a lot of the stuff from there. So that's an interesting one.
Yeah, you can essentially measure the length of the black bars. Now,
Yeah.
this in my mind is like the perfect application for AI, for large language models. Because if you want to redact something, you redact it and then take the text and have the AI rewrite it slightly, just a little bit, just to introduce some semantic drift, so that this reverse process of measuring the black bars doesn't fit quite well, because all the metrics in the entire document are different. I mean, there's this crazy person who actually like invented a text alignment algorithm for creating adjusted PDFs, but in monospaced fonts, such that all the lines have the exact same length. And the only way to get there is to have an LLM rewrite the text over and over until all the words in a line fill up the line from start to finish. So applying this technology to redacting PDFs, might not be the best idea if you want to use this in some sort of court setting or something. But in general, just, mess up the content slightly and you've broken this reverse engineering step.
Interesting, yeah. Or just, you lose like lots of like white space in there. There's like 2 pixels there, 3 pixels there kind of stuff that is not that confusing for people, but like it's an interesting
Chris,
one.
You got to use AI
to
solve any problem. It's 2026.
Okay.
Come on, get with the program.
Okay,
it's
fair
not
enough.
about the problem. It's about the fact there's AI in the solution.
Yeah. I love this one. This is basically using summary and details in HTML to have performance optimized video embeds with zero JavaScript. So the idea is that you're basically putting the video inside the summary and and you hide all of that thing off. And that play button is not play button of the video, but it's an SVG on top of it. And then you basically just load the video when it's actually needed by using autoplay on the video, which is to me always a big no-no. But in this case, as there is a step beforehand, it actually is okay. I found that very clever. I found it a very interesting use of summary and details that I hadn't thought of yet.
Yeah, and it works without JavaScript, but you pay the price by having a whole bunch of disconnected HTML and CSS that nobody will be able to understand sitting right there in the page. I would probably still stick with the web component that this article starts out with and complaining about how it uses JavaScript. Well, this doesn't use JavaScript, but it sure uses a lot of mental bandwidth for me.
Yeah, the light YouTube one is an interesting one as well. That basically I think the original embed was like 2 meg no matter what you do. Like and the light embed is just basically a few Ks to actually load the video in from YouTube. But I don't know. Like, is it necessary to you say there's HTML that nobody understands, but this is pretty straightforward what's going on in there.
Yeah, but having a single like custom element, even if it uses 10 lines of JavaScript, is probably simpler than, that thing there. Yeah,
but then you say you use that custom element 500 times in 6,000 React components, and then you have the diff soup again that you talked about.
You can use custom elements without React. You can do everything without React if you're not a coward.
Or you take the light thing and fork it and put this solution inside it. Then you don't see the horrible HTML either.
Sounds good, but we need some more AI to get funding for this.
I knew
Peter,
I knew when you were coming back on, we're going to have some quotes.
Throttling single network requests is now in DevTools as well, and I found it interesting because throttling for testing reasons is something that I always did, but just throttling simple ones that slow down my thing and basically can time out is an interesting feature to think about as well. And
I think about throttling a lot of things when I'm doing performance debugging. Let me tell you.
Well, other developers and product managers or something, or
maybe.
Maybe. Now,
From the
this had
browser
made them.
maker perspective, sorry, I didn't just jump in there. Just from the browser maker's perspective, how big a thing is that to do, right? Because I always feel like, I'm very much on the side of the people who I'm a browser user, not a browser maker. So you ask for things that you think are very simple, and then the person who's doing it says, yeah, you have no idea how complicated this is. And when I saw this, I thought it's maybe a good example, because from my side, it looks very simple. You go, oh, right, well, they can already throttle, so now we can just do it with a more granular control. But do you have any insight into like, would that have been? Are there a lot of like things that we don't know that would be issues as a result of changing something like that or adding that feature, or is it just they took time to get it right?
I think that was not that hard to do, because you have all the requests anyways, and you just basically make a filter up front and say like, these ones should go to the functionality that we do with the throttling of the others. The throttling functionality was there. We have each request, and you just do a lookup of like which one it is. There's not like a one thread that is doing all of them. Like under the hood, like the browser itself is single threaded for the moment, but like a lot of developer tools have different options to talk directly to the operating system to do other things in the background. So I don't think that's that. What's really freaking me out in this video is that the thing up there looks like a banner. And I was like, since when do developer tools have banner ads in them? And luckily enough, they don't do yet. But that feels like it's a sponsored developer tool. Again, on the front end masters blog, they talked about convert and compress, and I'm actually using that one as well right now. And I also commented that I'm also using Image Optim a lot for that. And it's a really, really cute page. It's really, really cute tool. It looks pretty as well. So I can shift it over quickly there. You can see it. So what that one does is basically you can paste, you can drag and drop like hundreds of photos and really, really big ones, and then you can have a granular control with live preview what's going on there. So you basically have this picture here, and you can resize it, and you can see the quality of it, and then you can say like, okay, what if I go to WebP now, and I want to see the difference in the two? You can actually have like a bar, if I know how to do that right now. You can see the difference between the two versions, and you cut down the quality, and then you can see if probably not going to show in the preview here properly now, but you also see in the bottom here like how much case and how much percentage of size you're missing, and it does all of that with like batch conversion. So you can put thousands of images in there, say like, okay, I have a preset, I want all my pictures to be like 800 pixels wide in WebP or HWIF or AWIF, and then drop it there. So it's a really interesting little tool to basically allows me to do a lot of stuff by hand that before that I always did with a script. I had like Hazel running in the background, and I used Image Optim on command line to say like, whatever I put into this folder, optimize for me and resize to that. And before that I did it with Automator, but this is a really nice interface for that. So something to take a look at. And for now it's free, and it's like $10 a year or $10 life license, I think,
lifetime.
already.
Yeah, lifetime. $9.99. Yeah.
And it's super. I mean, it's a really, really interesting tool to just make sure that your images aren't as big as they are. And yeah, every performance person keeps saying that like people just stop thinking about like JPEG for everything, and sometimes that's there. Another interesting one where Dan had a lot to say about was an app that actually recognizes if you're slouching and then blurs the screen when you're slouching.
Yeah,
now I love this. I have a hardware solution for that called Varifocals. Basically, if I lean back too much, it's basically the reading lens that actually sees my screen. But I found that very fascinating. I don't know about the performance of that, because if it keeps running the camera to actually detect my angle of my face, it's probably going to burn my machine really quickly, but it's a really cute idea.
It's great. It's great. And things like this, I don't know, I really enjoy these sort of really simple applications at the moment. And I wonder if sometimes it is just the vibe codiness that you can sort of whip these things up really quickly. But I do like these sorts of ones where it's almost like a utility, right? It's just one thing, really small. It's just whether or not, like you say, downloading it is actually maybe a negative because the performance, kind of effects of doing it, I don't know. But I do like the idea, because for all of us as developers, we talk about it every now and then, standing desks and ergonomics, but most of us spend several hours every day in a position we probably shouldn't if we were, and we're probably going to pay for it down the line. So this sort of stuff is actually doing quite important work, I think, even if it's a funny little tool,
You can weaponize it, and basically every time you slouch, HR gets an email that you violated the code of conduct in the company for like ergonomic movement. I wish I was joking, but when I worked for a large corporation that is in America, they actually had like ergonomic reviews of your desks every 3 months. So they would go through the office and say like, okay, here's the setting that you should have, this setting you should have. And as I was the only person on the team that worked from home and not in America, they kept my personal reviews were always delayed because they say like, oh, that's a mandatory thing to do. You have to get somebody to review your desk for your ergonomics. And I'm like, I work from home. I have a standing desk. I can send you pictures, but you're not going to send somebody from the office over here to take a look at my desk. Like, why would you do that? But it was a mandatory tick box. So that was an interesting bit to see. It's good that the company looks after you, but if it becomes like weird, because no, I don't want somebody in my house, it's getting odd. But yeah, the input as camera as an input is a thing for a lot of tools, I guess, nowadays. How about you, Peter? How much slouching do you do?
I paid a good bunch of money for this chair, so I hope it keeps me nice and healthy. I just find this application kind of odd. I mean, yes, this is a real problem, and it's easy to solve probably by just whipping up this application real quick. But just downloading something that always keeps the camera on. I mean, I'm literally talking into something that keeps the camera on right now. But in the not so distant future, I'm going to turn this off, and everything's going to be fine, depending on what I said previously and what I'm still going to say during this recording. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, this is also like a nice attack vector, I think, for interesting exploits to exfiltrate some more information about you and your surrounding. Probably
but that's just because
bifocal glasses is a better trade-off, and it's coming to us after all anyway at some point.
And they cost 900 euros. That was the bad thing about them. But yeah, you're right. You're right. It's a tool that always keeps the camera on. But I mean, this is just because you're cynical. I mean, you can make facial detection and only start doing the slouching motion when somebody is looking into it, and not do anything else, and not record any data and send it to China or somewhere else. This was vibe coded. It can only be secure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like I mean, this used AI for a change. So you're not complaining right now because it's an AI coded thing. It's like if Claude Code wrote this, it's probably better than any junior developer out there, right?
I spent my past weekend actually scrolling through OpenClaw, like reading the literal source code, and I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it before. And I've seen a lot of code bases.
How would you define it? How would you describe it? What were the big giveaways? And
the big giveaway is that there's it's quite obvious that there's no thought process behind anything. It's literally just generating code without anything that I would consider to be an overarching structure. And you can see this quite extensively when you look at utilities that are just getting replicated over and over and over in the code base. Like there is a folder with utilities in there, but a relatively simple process, like waiting a specified amount of milliseconds, getting a promise that resolves after such and such time. I found like way more than 20 instances of this scattered around the code base with different names. Like there's about 20 sleeps, 4 waits, a few defers, and so on. And there's like no thought process behind it. Many parts are missing comments, and the parts that have comments are methods like call this method to stop the server. And it's a method on a class called server, and the method is called stop. Well, thank you for this.
Well, that's where the comment wouldn't have helped more either, because it feels like going down a rabbit hole. Talking of which, let's play Fake or News so we can actually go into your more detailed topics. All right.
Right.
Let's get started. You know the rules. Like basically, we show you something that's a headline, and you have to say if it was a real news headline or if it's something that I made up in my fever dreams. Let's get started. AI.com bought by Crypto.com founder for 40 million in biggest ever website name deal.
It's true. It sounds real.
I believe it's so hard that it must be true, that I make it true.
No, it's fake because he actually spent 70 million, not 40.
Damn inflation.
It's got us.
Scientists develop a pill that lets you taste colors.
Yep, had that.
Yeah, I'm going to say, oh, wow. Yeah, I'm going to say, yeah. No more
No,
comments.
fake.
Oh.
I mean, we had pills in the 90s that did that, but those were not official medication, I guess. But yeah.
Anyone can be a scientist nowadays. Come on, we have AI.
Wedding photo booth company exposes customers' drunken photos.
Sounds real, doesn't it?
Yep.
Hey,
Yep.
no surprise.
Walmart is testing self-driving shopping carts for grocery stores.
Walmart is a real company. They wouldn't ever commit to something this stupid. Fake news.
I'm going to say real. I think so.
No, it's fake. But we had a smart shopping cart at our Congress last year. There's a company that did that. It was really cool stuff, but not self-driving. That makes no sense. AI Kicks are smart shoes that count your steps and calories.
Well, what do you mean by R? Like, I'm certain there's a webpage out there that claims you can buy these guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, these shoes are basically being made. Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
if you say they are being made, I'm team fake news.
Yeah,
You
it is
got it just
fake.
in time.
Yeah, Wendy's, on the other hand, released shoes with syrup in them. That was a real news, but I don't know why. But okay, cool. Nitrogen ransomware is so broken, even the crooks can't unlock your files.
Yeah, sounds plausible.
Yeah, it does. Fortunately.
Yeah, it is news. I wonder if people get their money back because they couldn't unlock it. Then is it like a money back guarantee from the ransomware? Maybe not. AI generated movie wins prestigious film festival award.
Well, prestigious again does a whole lot of heavy lifting here. I'm gonna guess true. For certain values of prestigious.
No, it's fake because it is so random. Like, I mean, there were a few short video awards being won by ones, but like not like Palme d'Or or something like that. Yeah. Scientists discover a way to charge phones by using body heat.
I'd say yeah.
I mean,
I'm so clueless.
My old Nokia brick that basically uses zero battery could probably be charged by body heat. I think so.
Yeah.
No, fake.
Scientists are laughing at us.
China is leading the fight against hidden car door handles.
Yep, I've read this
Yes.
one. This is true.
Yeah.
Yep, news. TikTok quietly launches a microdrama app called Pine Drama.
Please no.
TikTok doesn't quietly do anything, I don't think.
No, it's news.
Point.
It really happened. They have a microdrama app for some reason, which is interesting. So that was fake news. And you did well, I guess, this time. So let's go if people can do it again as well. You can always play that online later on if you wanted to. Cool. So let's go back to your product. Yeah, you're saying?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I think we're just waiting for that screen to change, aren't we? Is it the...
Yeah.
We are. There we are.
Yeah, I had to close. Now, on Monday, I was talking to Aaron T. Grok about this thing. He built this Nolo.js, which is reducing JS workload with HTML and CSS. And it's a repo that actually shows how to do things with basic HTML and a bit of CSS that you don't need JavaScript for. Now, I'm contributing a few things to that one as well right now, including those bars that you have running here, because they're just basically style checkboxes. And yeah, we talked about it a bit on the podcast on Monday, and it's going to be released this Friday in the newsletter. And I found it interesting that approach, but I also found it like this is something we tried to do for such a long time, but it feels like it's a lost cause because people do an npm init to start their projects now, rather than just even thinking about like what HTML would I need to do these kind of things. I mean, Peter, you said that earlier. You had this like, it feels like a lot of times we use HTML and CSS only solutions. They become less readable to you than a few lines of JavaScript. Is that?
No. I think it really depends on how you use it. Like, usual. The size doesn't matter that much. It really depends on the technique. And a few well-placed lines of JavaScript can really elevate your project. And if you do it right, it won't even break if JavaScript is not available. So it's really not that clear cut. It really comes down to picking the right tool for the job. But if the right tool nowadays is something like Next.js by default, you ain't gonna get something that's low on JavaScript, because you essentially pick up something that implements a lens of pure JavaScript before everything that you do. How are you going to reduce JavaScript? Doesn't even make sense in this context. But if you were to just use static site generation or an old school PHP-based CMS, you could still, continue the fight against JavaScript bloat. It really depends on which path you choose from the start.
Yeah, the other thing that I talked to him about was like, we can easily use those components that he's showing there and put them into component frameworks. And basically, then even with JavaScript users would not need to know that it's just only HTML and CSS rather than controlling it. Like that's the other thing. Like, but it's really hard.
Like, why would you? I mean, if I'm going all in on React, I have picked one worldview, and it then makes my job easier to just stay within the lanes and not have some wild deviations using strange CSS contraptions or web components or whatever. If I'm in React mode, I want to be in React mode, I think.
Yeah, but you never look at the HTML, CSS, and JS that you generate with React either. So basically, you wouldn't be the wiser what's actually going to be used to render something out.
Well, if it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time though, when you're looking at frameworks, it's that it's the life cycle of the component that kind of confuses things. And when you're using native elements, I think you start to feel like you have slightly less control over the re-rendering of things, in relation to like user interaction. Like it feels like the framework is actually so out of whack with the web, and just the platform, that it is actually quite hard to not use the components sometimes because of these unforeseen little quirks that actually React is introducing and Next is introducing, rather than it being the fault of the platform. So I can definitely kind of see that middle ground, that in an ideal world it would be great if we just used native elements, but it's not always actually that easy if you are in that React world.
What I liked about it when I looked at the things that he's written and he's done is that all of it is like standards based on like new features of CSS. In the past, when that fight was always going on, people came up with like a really contrived CSS only solutions that basically were like hack on top of hack on top of hack, to basically say like, we want to avoid JavaScript at all costs, where, as you said, Peter, one line of JavaScript would have solved the problem. Like, to me, it's always a pick and mix. Like, when HTML can do something, use HTML. Then make it look different or make it appear different depending on what the size of the screen is with CSS, and then actually give it extra functionality in JavaScript, like the old school like separation of concerns that we've preached since 1997. But a lot of people then started questioning that if it's really needed, and that's where the HTML, CSS, and JS came in, and like where everything became one code base again, because you wanted to control it in one file rather than just having to look into the CSS and have these connections there. So, and I mean, there's always been like the criticism saying like, of course you can change the CSS and make the appear completely different, but that was never a use case. Like, if you actually rebranded a product or rewrote a product, then you never ever just put another CSS file in there, but you changed a lot of functionality under the hood as well. Most of the time you went to another CMS or another framework or another language in the back end, and there's all kind of stuff that went into it. So it's an interesting thing to see. I mean, it was just great to actually see somebody just look at like what is actually possible right now and write like very simple solutions. I'm helping him with the Jekyll stuff and the page generation stuff, because that's something that he's not enjoying at all. And I've looked into a lot, And 11T and Jekyll and Liquid and all the different things is like an interesting syntax to get your head around when you actually want to write code. But it does a lot of cool stuff. Like hosting on GitHub Pages is just very cool, I have to say. This is really fun that we can give out our source code and write documentation in an executable fashion at the same time if we stick only with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Another bit that did the rounds that I found interesting was Ahmad talking about the too early breakpoint.
Oh boy.
Where we actually said like, okay, we start with a mobile view and then we go into the desktop view. And I find myself doing the opposite still because I'm just testing it on a mobile later on, but I basically built something there. But you said, oh boy, so yeah, go for it.
I'm just one of those weirdos with the TIE Fighter screen setup. Like a big screen in front of me and two tilted 90 degrees on the right and the left of me. And because of their aspect ratio, when I drag the browser window to one of the smaller screens to the sides, it instantly starts to think, despite the giant resolution, that I must be on a mobile device, and I get the, white space constraint and with a hamburger menu.
This big.
Yeah. And it drives me crazy that people can't just, check for mobile devices that are actually plausible and not my giant screens on my desk here.
Yeah, I think the whole when mobile apps came out and everybody was like, oh, that's the end of the web right now because everybody's going to use their mobile phone for everything. We went really, the design community went really in on like making it look like that. I mean, my favorite is like frameworks that make your website look like iOS 2 or something. And they're still around. So basically they look as outdated as like Windows 95 features now. But it's just we thought like everybody's going to use a mobile phone first. Now during COVID, we realized when I worked on Edge that basically the desktop usage soared compared to the mobile usage before, because people were at home and were just opening their laptop rather than using their mobile phone on the sofa. So that was an interesting one to go back to. But it's an interesting thing to think about. Like mobile was the market to reach where most of the users are. But then again, wrapping everything into an app, there's a desktop user market out there as well that is ready to spend some money. I think it's an interesting thing to not optimize fully for it. And my favorite was when then the iPad came out, and then every mobile phone, every interface was optimized for a small phone, and then blew up on the iPad, and every button was like half the screen, and you're like, yeah, do not do that.
Yep. Basically, my setup: 2 giant iPads, just without the touch functionality, the usable operating system, the everything. I just get the giant buttons.
Cool. This was another one as well where where it seems like software engineering is back. Coding agents have replaced every framework I used. And we talked about this in private, Dan and me as well. It kind of feels like that as well. Like, another pop-up. You basically, in the past, most code generators gave me like React or Next or random code up front. But now it actually gives me like basic JavaScript, HTML, and CSS when I do stuff. Is it just because the dependency hell is not there, or maybe because it learned from me and it wants to be nice to me and the AI wants to give me the stuff that makes me happy and not confuse me?
I mean, if you want it to do a certain thing, it will probably do something along the lines of your thing. I mean, that's not that surprising, I think.
Yeah. I think that what we noticed was there was like a shift towards like there was a time when it didn't matter what I was saying. If I didn't give it any kind of like what I want in terms of like architecture or even stack or anything like that, it would tend to go for like Next, or it would tend to go for React. When we were talking about we'd done some things a few weeks back, and that it was suggesting like it was opting for HTML, CSS. It wasn't necessarily going for a framework. And we were wondering if there was this kind of slight shift, that maybe the data that's been trained on, or perhaps it's like you said, the dependency hell, or keeping up with the versions of the frameworks, because that was always a problem, wasn't it? That the LLMs knew the previous version of React or whatever. So I don't know. It might just be something anecdotally we noticed that isn't actually happening.
I mean, it might be the case that the software changed, the LLMs have changed, maybe your prompting abilities have changed, and you just didn't notice because you can't step outside of your own head. I don't know. I mean, this is the fun with this kind of stuff. You just don't know where it comes from.
Well, I mean, I guess also the Copilot that I'm using in VS Code now has all the models included, so it's actually switched to Claude rather than just using the Codex thing. So that might be the other bit, that basically just another LLM gives me other dependencies there. So I don't know. Now we want to talk about one of your products that I came across that I didn't know about, and that's actually pretty cute. Yeah. So what is that?
Well, it says syntax highlighting animated, which is probably like the correct description. I mean, I do a lot of talks about code and coding, and I needed a way to create a bunch of slides talking about different languages and doing step-by-step guides through certain new APIs or rewrites or whatever. And I wanted to have something that is highlighted code, but also animated and also guides people through a multi-step process. So I turned this into a JavaScript program, and a few years ago actually bothered to build a website around it. This is what you have here.
So it's like not live coding, but live coding looks of it kind of thing. Like
Well, not really live coding. I mean, I also thought about live coding because you could essentially perform live coding and then do an edit pass over this, not with a nonlinear video editor, but if you think of your coding process as a state machine, you type a bunch of stuff and your cursor wanders around the code. You can then probably just modify this succession of inputs into the state machine and then replay this on a slide, for example. But I don't know, this is more my jam because you can do the big transition using just one press of a button and go from 100 lines of old code to look at this fancy new API. Now it's 3 lines.
And I mean, the other thing is, like, when you do live coding in your editor, you got all the IntelliSense pop-ups and all the stuff that actually is more confusing, or now the Copilot kicking in and telling you should write it in that instead. So this is just a very simple way to show the code that you want to show in a step-by-step fashion. I think it's a really cute way of doing it. I love the transitions that you do in between. They don't look that easy. What do you use for that one? Like the line transitions are piss easy, but the code transitions where you pop in between the characters, like how do you do that?
Do you really want to know? So essentially, like what I do with technology in general, like not just with AI, but with React and in this case also cryptocurrency, is that's interesting. I'm never going to use this, but how does it work? And the way this works is essentially I took a bunch of ideas that I took away from React and a bunch of ideas that I took away from cryptocurrency and added CSS transitions. So the code in each frame is represented as a concrete syntax tree that I turn into a hash tree. So I can represent each node using just a simple hash, and then I can compare one keyframe with the next keyframe, run a bunch of heuristics, figure out how I need to modify the tree in order to get the least distracting transition. And this can be at any level. I can, just flip a bunch of lines because they are just nodes. Or if I need to modify the line itself, I just go into the line and into statements, or in this case, it's HTML. I go into the element, into the attribute, into the attribute's value. The attribute values, because they can be arbitrary strings, are split down into sentence-like structures. These are all nodes inside this process. It's not down to the letter because this led to some really confusing transitions, but essentially it's diffing on hash trees, more or less. And then I generate an awful lot of really, really bad looking CSS that then just does transitions. So I can jump from an arbitrary keyframe to another arbitrary keyframe. It's just switching the opacity and the transform on certain, elements, on spans in there. It's simple in principle, but it takes a whole bunch of doing to actually get it to work at all.
And because it didn't use AI, it didn't get any funding for it and didn't make a startup that is a unicorn now.
I mean, I'm sort of the startup. I mean, if you really get into the groove of doing this, and if you don't use the JavaScript API, but I wrote my own presentation software, obviously, that hooks into this, and this makes it really easy to just bam, 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 bang out a bunch of slides where everybody goes, this looks very, like a lot of work. And in a way it is, but in another way it isn't, because, once the software is there, it's really easy to just bang out stuff that looks impressive without doing any work without AI. I mean, you can use AI. it actually works quite well if you tell the AI to, I have this code, break it down and explain it to me, but turn it into this JSON format that I then can pipe into the library. So you can actually use this in order to have the AI explain code to you and generate the animation while you are at it. I don't use it like this, but you could.
Can it generate a video, or you can just use like Playwright to do that or something?
What I do is actually sort of like this. I mean, it just a JavaScript library, right? It generates HTML and CSS, but you can essentially chuck this into Playwright if you want to, and then just film it. The way that I do it is a little bit more crazy because I want to have fine control over each frame. So what I do is I take my code, throw it into the library, get back information. This information can then be turned into the HTML and CSS, but there's a step before this. And the step before this is essentially telling you for each and every token that needs to exist in the scene for it to make sense, where it's going to be at what point in time. So you essentially get coordinates and an opacity value. And if you then take this, you can, if you really want to, feed this into another JavaScript program that essentially computes the CSS transitions manually. So you don't go from keyframe to keyframe, but you take your acceleration curve and interpolate every value in between, which is when you run into fun limitations in browsers where there's only so and so many CSS rules that can exist at a certain point. But I essentially generate a whole bunch of CSS, a new keyframe essentially for every like a frame in the transition, and then render this out to PNGs, pipe this into my video editor, and then go from there, which is extremely slow and extremely painful, but gives me fine control and maximum quality. But you could just record a screencast from Chrome or what have you.
Interesting. In essence, you wrote a parser for your own stuff. That's quite fascinating to see to turn it into this hatch tree.
I don't write the language parsers. Like I take established, well-used, well-loved open source software and then get the concrete syntax tree and then go from there, because it needs a whole bunch of more massaging. Like I can't simply accept something like a string. I need to split the string and look for sentence-like structures and colons and commas and so on to really make this make sense. But there's, again, a whole bunch of stuff around it to make it work just for me. I mean, I don't know of anyone that uses this for anything. As far as I'm concerned, I'm the only one who has any value derived from this. But, if you have any use case out there, if you want more languages supported in there, let me know. Maybe I can help you.
I mean, I see other people use Wallaby and these kind of things that execute it directly in Visual Studio Code to basically do that kind of stuff. That's another way of I see people doing that when they do live coding or showing this kind of thing. I just came across it. The other thing that you do every Friday is a Freedom Friday. What is that about?
It's about replacing something from Node modules with a built-in feature. I mean, something that I do. I think we are at at 4 editions of this. I'm essentially just sharing a simple tip on social media. Hey, you're probably using this library. There's something built into the platform. Like replace your testing library with Node's built-in test runner. Or you don't need a base 64 library. It's a static method on, byte arrays in every JavaScript platform. Something like this. Really simple tips to just, remove something, anything from Node modules.
Why?
Why not? It works. Why would you install some wipe-coded malware from God knows where when you can simply trust your browser?
Yeah, I mean, I just started recently doing a lot of stuff with that, and my favorite is always when you have a Git repository and you actually do a local install of Node modules in that Git repository. And yeah, that was never a good idea. Out of a sudden, my Git tree was like 60,000 changes, and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But yeah, the setting up your Git repos and making sure that your Git ignore has Node modules in there is a very, very interesting and good step to do. But yeah, it's how's the feedback so far? Because I like the way, because I mean, the other thing is it's in German, which is like, of course, because you're not inclusive and you hate people. And
it's only in German. It's only in German on LinkedIn because German people on LinkedIn can't read English.
Oh, okay.
On real social media, it's available in English.
Okay, fair enough then. Because we have these independent days of like of like US services as well. That's been a thing that every Sunday, basically first Sunday of the month or something, or second, people can get learn about like alternatives to American services that they shouldn't be connected with. And you got Mark Uwe Kling and people like that promoting that. I tried to get him to on the show, but so far he hasn't answered. But I find it interesting that that freedom aspect is something that I really like. Like, okay, you have a lot of craft in your product. You probably don't have ever time to look into it and release it. And here's just a few features. And I found it a very clever way to show people sometimes new, but also sometimes known things that people have never used in JavaScript that is natively in the language now, just because they relied on the Node module for that long. Stefan Judis does similar things on his blog where he said like, oh, here's a random thing I find in MDN that you probably don't know about. And it's really easy to forget about that. You wrote about that CSS parser thing that's in there now, that there's a lot of CSS functions to clean up CSS for you. Yeah, that was also really something that I knew was in there, but I didn't know it was available yet. And I'm like, cool, this is really, really sensible.
Well, but to actually appreciate this, you need to run into situations where you need it. Like the CSS example was like taking a string and turning it into a string that that works as a CSS selector, like escaping hashes and colons and so on. But to actually have to use this, you probably needed to touch an enterprise code base where you have attributes and HTML elements that are entire paths down to Windows system 32 and so on. When I was in a situation like this thing, CSS escape, came in handy. I don't know what developers who deal with this sort of system, what they do, like instead of this. I have no idea.
I mean, it's use cases that didn't come up in the past, but it's great when they become like native features. Like URL parsing now is in the JavaScript language itself. And I know people who had like URL libraries and actually wrote them, and it was not fun for them to maintain that kind of stuff. And now it's very much easier to parse a URL without actually letting XSS payloads through, because the browser does it for you rather than you writing a regex that is not strict enough.
Yeah, but learning about this is really hard if you are just knee deep into the project, into your way of doing things, into your framework. So that's why I write all the little posts with all the little gadgets and helpers and one-liners that can, maybe get your Node modules at least a little bit smaller.
Cool. Okay, I think that's it for today. Thanks again for being here, Peter. This is always just very natural. We just don't even have to go through a list. We just come up with random things to talk about, and it's really interesting to see. I mean, that open claw analysis would be interesting. Are you going to write about that, or is it just for you right now?
I mean, I wrote. Of course, you couldn't read it because it's in German, but there was a decently sized post on LinkedIn. I mean, I'm not going to write too much more about this than that, because, I'm sorry, but it's slop. It's kind of alien. It's kind of mindless. There's only so much you can say about it. I don't know.
I like that they now partner with a virus scanning company to make sure that at least there is a modicum of security there. But it feels to me like a patch. Like, okay, shit, we realized that we did something wrong here, and people like thousands of computers got access with it. I mean, I have it in the newsletter on Friday. Like 17% of the agent skills, that basically the add-ons to OpenClaw, are malware and crypto.
Yeah, I mean
17%.
I mean, it's probably not even really that easy to identify something as definitely malware or definitely a useful agent-like feature. I mean, if you buy into their way of thinking about stuff and of doing things, then you want these bots to access your entire mail. It doesn't make much sense without it, but how can anything that can access your entire mail not be malware? I think it's not that clear cut whether some skill in there is malware or not. All I can say is the TypeScript code that this project is consisting of, very mid.
I think it's not meant for human consumption. That's the whole idea of this world, isn't it? Like computers writing code for computers rather than like looking into it and seeing what's going on there.
For computers. Again, the same function implemented over and over and over again. Computers don't like this too. I mean, it's slow, it's unnecessary payload. And at some point, stuff like this is going to matter.
Well, I mean, it's a compound thing, isn't it? Like when we found like 3 XML parsers in Microsoft Teams because somebody put one in there, never put the effort into looking if something is already parsing the bit. Like and like Friday afternoon, you have to release this right now, and you add another one, and then you add another one on it. But yeah, just an editor should flag that up nowadays to say like, hey, you're doing a sleep function here. Did you know there's 5 of them already in the code base?
How do you identify a sleep function? I mean, I really had to write some quite advanced regular expressions with my phone on the couch because I'm not going to get up from there to review this code. And I only did this. I mean, I could theoretically scan the syntax trees, like do a tool that works on the code on a deeper level to identify probably even more of this. I just looked for patterns that kind of looked like something that looks like I create an ad hoc promise with a timeout in there. But there's probably more of that if anyone bothered to look. But I'm not gonna. I've done my work.
Well, I think it's also a moving target. That code will change within 2 days again as well. I mean, like when you talk to Claude, that Claude is written by Claude now, and like it's just everything is just generation. But yeah, it's interesting to take a look at it, like what's behind it. But yeah, interesting that you put the effort in. Well, again, thanks for being part of the show. Thanks for being here.
It was a pleasure, as usual.
Yeah, and thanks, Danny, for being here as well. Any last words for our audience from Dan?
Oh, from me, go and check out Code Movie. Very, very cool project, and I think I'm a sucker for anything that sort of is a bit video-y and to do with code snippets. So yeah, I was quite excited to talk to you about that, Peter. And let's make sure that more people use it, because I think when you said there's nobody out here or nobody out there finds any value in it, I couldn't disagree more. I think it's actually a really cool tool that people will find a lot of value in. So yeah, cheers for coming on and showing it to us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and we will be talking again when you actually try to use the API, because I'm not so sure.
Modest.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much. This was WeAreDevelopers Live for this Wednesday. See you next Wednesday, and see you in the newsletter on Friday, and see you all at the Congress in Berlin, and in the Americans in the Congress in San Jose at the end of the year. And we're also coming to India, but there's lots of stuff happening. Thanks again, Peter. Wonderful to have you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.